We're looking at the Jetson Bolt Pro. This is an extremely affordable $599 electric bike that you can find at Costco. I've seen a bunch of people riding these just all over the place because I think they're so accessible. You know, it's cute. It's got this little built-in handle right here. It's simple, and most of all, it's cheap. Now, I'm 5'9", I weigh about 135 pounds, and I can kind of make this work. You know, it's got a seat post you can elevate, and even though you don't have a telescoping handlebar post here, you can kind of swivel this a little bit. You just kind of make it work. This is 43.2 pounds, pretty close to what they said on the website. I actually had a kind of a mixed experience. They have a manual, and the manual was very precise and accurate. The website felt like things were a little inflated. I think that the site said 41 pounds, and then they said up to 30 miles, but then when you read the manual, it was like 5 to maybe 15 miles. So I haven't actually range tested this. This has been a very interesting day. I bought this used from someone who was selling it on Facebook Marketplace, right? And it was kind of unopened. It looked brand new, and they basically said, hey, we got it as a gift. It looked too small, so we're just gonna sell it. I assembled it, got the thing all set up, and then it wasn't working. So I charged it up. This is the charger, by the way. Only weighs 0.6 pounds, like half a pound, 1.5 amps. So it's kind of slower than most of the chargers I'm used to seeing. But the battery capacity is quite small, 216 watt hours. Most electric bikes I see have 400, 500 watt hours is pretty standard, but most electric bikes aren't this small and affordable. So I kind of get it. They say lithium ion cells, probably going a little bit cheaper, I would guess. Maybe, C quality instead of A or B. It's hard for me to say in terms of like how long this is gonna last and the range, because I've spent a lot of the day kind of screwing around with it. As I was saying, I got the bike, I plugged it in, I charged it up, and then I went up to the buttons pads up here. I pressed power, and I got the little readout here. There's 4 little LEDs, and all 4 of them lit up. So I was like, great, it's charged, it's ready to go. And I twisted the throttle, and I heard like, right? And I saw it turn just a little bit. And I did it again, I twisted it, and it was like, right? But it didn't actually work. And that was such a bummer. There is a cadence sensor down here. This appears to be like a 12 magnet sealed sensor. Nice, there are other ones where the magnets are external and it's not quite as compact and streamlined as this. So I'm feeling like, there's some decent parts on this bike, but I know they gotta try to keep the price down. I like that the wires are internally routed and everything, and then I realized, this handlebar, you kind of open this buckle, the handlebar folds down. So this is sort of a folding bike. It's still going to be a certain length and kind of height unless you take the seat off, but it does get fairly compact. And one of the trade-offs there is that these wires are going to kind of get bent again and again, and they can kind of pull through the frame. That's the case with any folding electric bike. But ultimately, that bike didn't work. I was so bummed. So I called the people that I bought this from, and I was like, hey, it's not really working. They were like, oh, did you charge the battery? I'm like, yeah, I did. And inside the box, it includes some little flyers, one of which says, don't return it to the store. Talk to us first at Jetson. So I was like, cool. I went to their website, I called the number. Unfortunately, it was after hours. So I talked to the folks who sold this to me, and they said, actually, we have another one that our daughter loves and she uses it all the time. You could use that one, because I explained I just wanted to film it. So that's what we're looking at here. This one is not like brand new. She's been using it a lot. The light does not appear to work. The bike's on right now, and this is the headlight button right here. You press it, or you can kind of hold it, and that's supposed to activate the light. So it just doesn't seem like it's working. On the other one, the light would flash. I wasn't able to get it to be solid the whole time, so that was kind of confusing. And then it comes with an external light back here, and it has 3 modes. There's like flashing fast, slow, or solid, and it just uses a little coin battery inside. So I love that they're thinking about safety, because the bike is so low to the ground. It's all black. You don't have reflective sidewalls or anything, and you just, you want to keep that visible footprint, especially if you are commuting in the city and you've got cars and things going by. The manual is really funny. It's like, always wear elbow pads and knee pads, don't operate near motor vehicles. I mean, you can tell that it's kind of the CYA, make sure you're not liable for anything that goes wrong, don't open the battery casing. And this is where it's kind of a trade-off. I mean, yes, this is affordable, but then how do you replace this battery? You can't even take it off the bike, right? Like it's kind of built on there, and you're not supposed to do anything yourself. Jetson appears to be the kind of company that wants to be responsive and help you, but I can't help but feel that some of these cheap bikes end up being a little wasteful, because it's kind of a throwaway at some point. So if I was buying this and I didn't have a lot of space, I'm parking it outside, you kind of can't do that. They recommend keeping it inside. You want to keep the battery, the guide says charge it up every month or so if you haven't used it, and that's just to kind of keep the lithium-ion battery healthy. Extreme heat is hard on them. You're not going to get as many full charge cycles. It's going to degrade faster, and extreme cold is going to cut your range in half. So that's just tips for any lithium-ion battery. But in this case, you have to take kind of the whole bike near the wall outlet to charge it. And if you're in a workplace or something, you have to park outside, it's going to be a little bit more exposed. Not the end of the world, but just something to think about. And some of the other compromises here is that like everything on this bike is steel. Like all of these, the fork, the seat post, the handlebar post, even the handlebar itself. And that's why it weighs more than it appears to. And it's actually kind of heavy. I was expecting like, oh, it's small, it's going to be light. 43 pounds for something so compact. I was a little disappointed. I mean, there's not a whole lot of rubber here. The tires and wheels are so small. I guess I should say, I think these might be aluminum alloy or magnesium rims because they were not magnetized. Some of the specs on this bike, got a 12-tooth cog in the rear, 37-tooth steel chainring with a plastic guard, which is kind of nice, and a cover, so that's really good. This thing's probably not going to fall off. There's no derailleur. You don't have any gears, and there aren't any assist levels. It's just sort of like, throttle, variable speed, and then are you pedaling or not? It's just a basic cadence sensor. So the experience on this is a little bit simpler, and it works fine. The top speed is 15.5 miles per hour, whereas most electric bikes will get up to like 20 miles per hour in the US and Canada. I saw that they sell this in Spain and Portugal and the United Kingdom. So it's the kind of thing that's sort of global, and they're just kind of checking the box to try to make it legal everywhere, because in Europe, a lot of places have the 25 kilometer per hour, 15.5 mile per hour top speed, and that helps to give you the farther range as well. So back to the battery for a minute. Lithium ion cells, we don't know who makes them. We also don't know the motor, which, I should say 350 watt nominal is what they say, hub motor, and it's inside the wheel casing. So that's that. I want to, there's so much to talk about. I spent a lot of time with this bike. I like that the motor power cable comes down here and enters kind of in this, between the disc brake and the kickstand. It's not exposed. A lot of times you'll see the motor power cable coming into the hub and it'll kind of stick out over here. So this feels well protected, but the fact that the first bike I tried, the motor didn't work, and back to those cables, they're all internally routed, which looks nice, but then in terms of servicing them, it's a little bit more difficult. So the battery is rated at 36 volt, 6 amp hours for a total of 216 watt hours. And yeah, I don't know. Let's keep going on some of the other specs here. 140 millimeter crank arms, steel instead of aluminum alloy, plastic pedals, which kind of get the job done, but they're a little mushier, and the bearings and stuff are kind of basic. Kickstand, I don't think it's adjustable. I twisted that plastic thing, but it's kind of the right height, but I got a rock here just to make it look perfect. I think if we come up to the front and look at the headlight, it's got a plastic housing. I kind of wish that it had some side windows or something just to keep you more visible. Appears to be just a single LED, but hey, at least it's integrated. And the flashing might help to not run the battery down as much because it is such a kind of a lower capacity battery. We do have this buckle here that opens up to swivel this part down. The brake levers they're fairly nice, 4-finger. They both have motor inhibitors. They are mechanical, but these motor inhibitors basically send a signal to the motor and the controller to stop. So anytime you're braking, you're not going to be fighting against the motor power, and it's just going to be more efficient and safer that way. Both of them have 160 millimeter rotors, the front and rear. And then I love that the hose, which, it kind of covers and protects the metal brake line itself, they're aimed down. So if you get some condensation or dirt on this, it's not gonna like go into the tube and get it as gunky. Mechanical brakes, they tend to require a little bit more hand effort, and they're just kind of simpler than hydraulic, but they are easier to adjust, and these ones are in need of adjustment. You can see if we pull this in, the brake lever is basically like hitting the grip, so you're not actually getting all of the pressure you'd want for stopping. The young girl who owns this bike must be riding it and loving it and stuff, but the parents should maybe look at this. Maybe they already have adjusted this a couple times so that the brakes would work, and eventually you have to replace the brake pads themselves. 28.6 millimeter seat post here, which is kind of a unique measurement. I was expecting 27.2 or something, but it's wide enough. Maybe you could put a suspension post or something if you wanted to. And the saddle It's polyurethane foam. It was kind of generic, but it does have these springs, which gives you some comfort. I appreciate that because with a smaller wheel size, you get this like higher attack angle. So the wheels like run into stuff instead of kind of smoothing over stuff the way that bigger wheels do. The tires, I think these are CST Changshin tire, and they said 14 by 2.125 with a 35 to 45 PSI rating. You want to keep these fairly high so that you don't get pinch flats and stuff, but it's just such a unique tire size and tube size that if you do get a flat tire, and I didn't see puncture protection rating on these, taking these off, you're going to need some tools, and then finding the tube, you might need to look online. Here's this nice front fender, kind of a mud flap. Looks like it's kind of gotten kicked a little bit over time. And then the rear fender, there should be another one here that just kind of sticks up, but I guess we lost that at some point. I do appreciate that they included a bell, and we've got these flat grips here, and this one, the whole grip twists, just that's how you use the throttle. They're both rubber. They're not locking, but they seem to do all right, and the handlebar is really narrow because this is meant to be kind of compact, and that lets you kind of fit through cars and maybe get through doorways a little bit more easily versus like hitting them as you go through. The bike, it's stable enough, but as I was riding, I tried to do some no hands riding, and you could kind of feel it tipping. It was a little bit more wobbly than a full-size bike. Despite being fairly compact, they say this is rated to handle up to 265-pound max weight, which is kind of nice. You know, that's an adult. They say it can climb 15-degree slopes, and I haven't tested that myself. This one's not fully charged, but that's cool. You know, you do get a mechanical advantage when you have a smaller wheel, so the hub motor doesn't have to pull this big, tall wheel. But again, no suspension fork or anything, so comfort's a little bit of a trade-off. And I want to complain a little bit. This is not my favorite type of seat post. It kind of tapers in at the top. This reflector should actually be lower, but it's not set up right. And then you have two nuts, one on each side. So tightening this can be a real pain, and you can see that this is aimed up. It's a little bit out of adjustment. It's just kind of basic cheap parts again. And back to the steel, you know, steel is heavy, but it also can rust. So if you get scratches like on anywhere on this bike, it could start to rust. You might want to just have some like model paint or even fingernail polish and stuff just to touch up scratches over time. And this one's actually doing pretty well, which is impressive. I don't know how old it is, but we are in Canada here in Delta, and it rains and stuff, so they're doing a good job. The bike was really easy to build. You know, it comes in a fairly big box. You kind of just pull it out and then put the handlebar up and add the pedals and the seat, and you're ready to go. Some of the things that were missing, I didn't see bottle cage bosses anywhere, which is something I'm always thinking about. This is where the fender would be. For adding a rear rack, they actually have threaded eyelets, and you could get like a seat clamp here that would have some bosses on it. So maybe you could get a rack, but it'd have to be a pretty small one. And to move the bike, I actually just put it in my car. It wouldn't fit on my car rack because it was like too short, and there I kind of have a platform rack, and the wheels weren't tall enough for the arm to sort of clamp down on. So keep that in mind in terms of transporting this thing around. I also usually recommend taking batteries off of bikes to reduce weight when you lift them, but it's not something you can do here. Coming back to the handlebar in the cockpit, there's just not a lot of feedback. Aside from the battery estimate, which is sort of a rough estimate, each dot represents like a 25% step. There's no current speed, there's no assist level choices, there's no trip distance. It's just very basic, and maybe that's okay given the limited top speed, but those are some of the things you're trading with a product like this. And I'm not trying to be overly critical, but my first electric bike kind of disappointed me. I wish I'd spent more because I used it so much, and I was like, this is really awesome, and I just felt like kind of limited, and it was like, oh, now I got to sell it used, and you know, I'm losing money on the taxes I paid and the cost and stuff. So I love electric bikes, and I think this could be a good fit for people who are aware of some of the limitations. You don't need to go fast, you're not worried about going far, and the comfort isn't an issue, the range. With all of that said, maybe it's time to hop on this thing and show you. I do like how quiet it is, and it is like a fun little thing to zip around on. Okay, so I got the seat post at the maximum recommended extension. There's some lines there, because if you go too far, you don't want to break that. The standover height's pretty approachable. I'd call this a mid-step. Kind of get on. I'm not getting full leg extension, but let's just do some pedal assist here. See how responsive it is. And I'm not feeling pedal assist at all. which is weird. I mean, it does have the cadence sensor, but I don't have anything to compare this to. The throttle is definitely working, so let's do that. Yeah, I can kind of ease into it. That's really satisfying. And no brakes, so using the feet there. Let's try this again. There you go. Got to be careful where I ride this thing. Go off-road a little bit here. A little bit of a climb up the grass there. Kind of made it. I'm going to use the throttle since pedal assist wasn't working. With a little bit of momentum, I actually made it up this hill right here. You can kind of see where I'm coming from. It worked out okay. You know, again, you have the smaller wheel diameter, so the hub motor gets that mechanical advantage. So Arvin, what do you like about this bike?
That it can go fast and it's like a motorcycle.
Yeah, with the throttle and stuff.
Yeah.
I noticed it. I thought it would have pedal assist down there. How long have you had the bike?
Like 3 weeks.
3 weeks, nice. Does that sound about right?
Yes.
Did it ever have pedal assist where you pedaled and it would go automatically? Or do you always use the throttle?
I always
use the throttle. And it's cool. I mean, the top speed on that's 15.5 miles per hour. So it's a
Yes.
little safer with the small wheels and young people. What do you like about it, Dad?
That's for my daughter. She's 12 years old. Bought it for her and he's just 9 years old. She didn't even drive that much and he's just running around. He said, Dad,
Like
she
freedom.
doesn't like it. Yeah. So he's just playing around.
Good job looking both ways. Look at this guy. He's a pro. How fun. Good job. Woo! Good one. High five. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, you know, it kind of gets the job done. I read some of the reviews on Jetson's website, right? Like customer reviews, and kind of say like, oh, I'm a student and this is great. It lets me get to class. And I can totally see if you're on a budget, a bike like this. I mean, this one works. There are several parts that seem to have worn out, but this one's been used. When you're looking at affordable bikes, I think a lot of them do use cheaper parts in general. I like e-bikes, and I don't want to complain too much about this. My goal was just to go in depth and provide some of that feedback, some of the trade-offs that you'd be making, because it's still, you know, $500 or $600. You got to pay the taxes and everything, and then like the whole e-waste. You know, what do you do when you're done with it? You're supposed to take it to some sort of electronics recycler. I would say there is a company called FTH Power in California, if you're in the United States. A lot of people will reach out and be like, oh, my battery died, what can I do? FTH Power, sometimes they can repack batteries, especially if they don't have like fancy BMS systems like Bosch and the really fancy companies. Those people tend to keep their stuff proprietary. But if you have a basic battery, and maybe this bike, in this case, you could have it repacked, but it's gonna cost hundreds of dollars plus shipping. So again, this is sort of, I see this as like a kind of a one-time bike. You get it, you hope everything works. I hope that helps you guys. I love ya. You can check this out with all the details at ElectricBikeReview.com. And I've got a comparison tool, so you can look at this, some other bikes. There are a few bikes in like the $1,000, $1,500 price range. I realize we're talking 100% more in terms of cost, but I think it's worth exploring. There's also forums, and I do have a Jetsons forum, so you can see what other people are saying. It's not like their official review page. It's not a Facebook group that's moderated by the company. We try to keep it as open as possible. I'm really just trying to be objective. I spent my own money to buy this bike, and I spent a couple days here screwing around trying to get this done for you, and I really care. I hope this helps you. I love you guys. Ride safe, and we'll see you next time.